They say every day is for the thief, one day for the owner of the house. But ICPC, the Anti-Corruption Commission, has reversed the role. It is now every day for the owner of the house. If you're involved in bribery, over-invoicing, or any shady deal, the day of reckoning has come. ICPC, the Anti-Corruption Commission, is watching you. If you're reported for any corrupt practice, you'll be investigated, prosecuted, and punished. Corruption is harmful to our nation. Join the campaign against it by reporting any corrupt practice to ICPC, the Anti-Corruption Commission.
Let we join hands with ICPC, make them better.
Let's make Nigeria great again.
ICPC, they watch you.
Come on, hand for corruption.
Break the chain of corruption now. Don't give, don't take. This message is brought to you by ICPC, the Anti-Corruption Commission.
Hello viewers, welcome to Corruption Must Go, ICPC's weekly television program. I'm your host, Hawa Garba. Today on the program, we shall be looking at the just concluded virtual meeting on draft national ethics and integrity policy, which ICPC convened in collaboration with key government bodies. The meeting had to be virtual because of the social distancing requirement to stop the spread of COVID-19. The policy is designed to promote the core values of human dignity, voice and participation, patriotism, personal responsibility, integrity, national unity, and professionalism. Stay with us as we bring you details after this timeout.
Corruption not in my country.
Hello, Alahaji. Right now I'm in Abuja. No. Hello, Adamu. Right now I'm in Kano. Yes. When I get back, I will just call you. Look, what is wrong with you? I'm talking on the phone and you are gesticulating and doing. What's wrong with you?
Daddy, where exactly are we as we speak?
Are you alright? This is Lagos.
Well, you just lied to someone that we're in Abuja.
Keep quiet. Who told you can tell an elderly person is lying?
Daddy, you just lied. And by lying, you're raising corrupt children for the future of Nigeria. That is corruption, not in my country.
Stop corruption now.
Corruption not in my country.
Welcome back. With a prime objective to halt the slide in Nigeria's ethical values, ICPC, in collaboration with the National Orientation Agency, NOA, and the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, OSGF, organized a meeting of stakeholders to consult with them on the draft national ethics and integrity policy to be presented to the federal government for adoption. Welcoming participants to the meeting and setting its tone, ICPC Chairman Professor Bolaji Owasonye said it was convened to only discuss the structure of the ethics and integrity policy, noting that it was not a discussion on what collapsed Nigeria's ethical values, nor a discussion on what activities and sanctions would be applicable for violations of ethical standards.
This meeting is to discuss the structure of the ethics and integrity policy, not just in fulfillment of the President's pledge, but because many people in this virtual meeting room and many more outside are gravely concerned that ethics and values in the Nigerian society have completely collapsed. We struggle hard to find role models. Let me explain our strategy. This meeting is to discuss the structure of the ethics and integrity policy. It is not a discussion about what led to the collapse of ethical values. It is not a discussion on what activities and sanctions will be applicable for violations of ethical standards. It is not about what should be done to mobilize citizens. All of these and much more, including how to deal with unethical conduct that is not presently fully covered by existing law and regulations, will be widely discussed after government adopts a framework to guide the process And many of you here who are in this virtual meeting room will be actively involved in that process.
In his opening remarks, the Director General of NOA, Mr. Garba Abari, linked the nation's ethics crisis with the negative effects of globalization, while advocating a critical brainstorming on how the contents of the policy would be taken to every Nigeria in the most pedestrian manner that not only inspires them to own it, but to submit to its principles.
I would only add, however, that whatever would follow from our discussion, or whatever will be our contribution, will now derive from what we will tap from our 4 resource persons. However, let us put it on record that this is actually a meeting, all other meetings, which will address one of the biggest problems that is facing our country: collapse of values and ethics. And this is actually part of what explains our development problems, either at individual level, at community, and at governmental level. So I would want to crave the indulgence of everyone to listen to the resource persons, and please, let's make robust contribution towards coming up with a policy that is going to be well structured, feasible, applicable, and will talk to our present reality.
The Permanent Secretary, Political and Economic Affairs Office, Mr. Andrew Adejo, who represented the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, remarked that the policy was very important to government at this very time, given that previous attempts to institute national ethics policies had met with little success.
Let me say that this policy is very important to government. As Nigerians, we all know efforts that have been made in trying to bring the 4 of our innate ethics, values, and integrity to the floor, beginning from when Shagari started an attempt at an ethical evolution when he was president, and over the years going through MAMSA and all. But we will not bother to go through what happened, but learn from the lessons. And with what ICPC has done, I think they've learned from the lessons. But the messages that will come out will depend on what you, as practitioners in the field, will be able to put together and give back to society.
Corruption Must Go continues after this break. Stay with us.
Suddenly, the world stopped.
COVID-19 does not discriminate.
Like corruption, everyone,
Regardless of
Social status,
economic class,
color,
creed,
religion,
pays. Corruption is deadly to development.
COVID-19 is deadly to human lives.
corrupt persons exploit times of emergency response
To act corruptly.
Do not be tempted.
Don't enrich yourself with COVID-19 relief funds.
ICPC is watching.
If we can end COVID-19
By sacrificing social contacts, we can eradicate
Corruption.
COVID-19 can be prevented.
Also,
Corruption can be prevented.
ICPC salutes all the people
On the front lines
Of COVID-19 fight.
we salute you too.
for saying no to corruption.
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 You are still watching Corruption Must Go. After the opening segment, the meeting went into a technical session, which was moderated by the chairman of ICPC. The session featured paper presentations. First among the presenters was Mr. Abia Udofia, Director, Corruption Monitoring and Evaluation Department of ICPC, who presented a paper on legal basis for a national ethics and integrity policy.
So you may ask, what is really the basis for the national ethics and integrity policy? Well, I will refer you to the Constitution. Chapter 2 of that Constitution which speaks of fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy. It captures the values of the nation, particularly dignity of labor, respect, patriotism, nationalism, and so forth. So if we don't have that, we cannot really have a direction to ensure that these things are strengthened in our policies and laws. We also have other laws. The ICPC Act 2000, Section 826, which forbids unethical practices like bribery, directing certain activities that are not really consonant with the law. If you abuse your office, Section 19, it is an offense. Then if you live above your means, it's unethical, and the law also punishes that. The EFC Act also speaks on this.
Dr. Kefas Leriwonu, lead consultant, rule of law and anti-corruption program, ROLAC, of the British Council, in his presentation titled Core Values of an Ethics and Integrity Policy, said the policy was a product of a national and international research work and dwelt on its core values.
Against the background of what all the other participants already talked about, one issue that we ought to always think about is human dignity. And human dignity is the fact that every person must be recognized. Every person has dignity. Every person must be recognized. Every person must be respected, no matter who you are, no matter your ethnicity, no matter your religious persuasion, but everybody must be respected and protected. The second issue is voice and participation, that everybody has the capacity and the ability to participate in governance. And therefore, governance should not be left to governors or the president, but it is everybody's responsibility to be able to participate in helping us develop those policies that will bring us dignity, that will help us to be able to care for ourselves. Personal responsibility, that is very obvious. We all have to understand that we have a personal responsibility to do our bit in terms of what we have to do to contribute to helping our society, and the fact that we have a personal responsibility also to take care of each other. And the other issue is national integrity, personal integrity. We ought to maintain personal integrity in terms of being close to our principles, staying close to our principles, and helping our principles guide whatever we do, so that we can unite our country.
Mr. Soji Apampa, who made the last presentation entitled Public-Private Ethical Revolution, What We Need, posited that regulations and regulatory actions should always be in the public interest and not for the benefit of a few, stressing that rules should be applied fairly across board to elicit voluntary compliance.
The policy must mainstream it into how we win government business, for instance, how we access subsidies or other special benefits to catch our attention, or even how we participate in the value chains or the supply chains of other companies. If it's not a requirement there, it's not likely that people will take it up. Then consequence management against business leaders for not following know your customer and know your customer's business rules must be swift and effective. Otherwise, people are not going to care. And sufficient numbers of firms must see a tangible benefit in making the investments in time and money that will be required to build certifiable ethics and integrity compliance. So, but what most businesses, and especially the micro, small, and medium enterprises, what they fear the most is the interaction with their regulator. many have reported that pressure from the regulator is what forces them to part with a bribe. That pressure and the tactics employed by regulators and sometimes from their regulatory actions is what pushes them to the wall and makes them have to negotiate some kind of payment. So, and regulation needs to involve capacities of standard setting, like we're doing through this policy. But if we set the standard and we're not able to gather compliance information, people will be able to game the system, and the zeal that people have to do the right thing will fall over. And also, if it's not followed up by consequence management towards behavior modification, then people will also take it that it doesn't really matter.
During the interactive session, many of the participants advocated for the inculcation of the policy into the educational curricula of the nation's institutions. Some drew attention to the corruptive tendencies of the country's politics and politicians.
I believe that in religious arenas, these are the core issues that we teach every day. And for these matters to be taken up by government, we are really, really pleased, because we believe that government can help in many ways to be able to monitor and to ensure that these ethical values are being adhered to. As religious bodies, we may teach these same truths, but we have no power to discipline or sanction or monitor somebody who is going against what we are teaching. We do not have power. You can go to the church to worship, you can go to the mosque to pray, but the leaders of the church have no power to follow you and monitor you and tell you to bring your papers, bring your books. We teach these things so we can see the government really expanding, because all these values you have mentioned, they are there in the Bible, they are there in the Quran. They are the key things that we teach. So we are very, very grateful.
I have to emphasize that unless and until our politicians are ready to make it work, we all have all the rules and regulations, all the laws that are guiding all what we have been saying from the start of the day. But we still need our leaders to wake up to their responsibility. Because unless you cannot, we have an adage that says, if you want to enforce a child not to, if the child does not allow the parent to sleep, he too will not have a sleep. The leaders are not showing good example. I'm sorry, I have to say it this way. This is why we have lost the values. Because if the defaulters are not coming from those that are supposed to be the lawmakers, then the sanctions will be easy to be taken upon the citizens. So I call on all our leaders to wake up to their responsibility and let it work.
Other participants suggested the introduction of sanctions and a determined sensitization and mobilization of citizens through the media and all available platforms to ensure that the policy works.
I just want to say that in spite of all the work that has been done over the years, if there are no strong sanctions, the history of humanity has shown that sanctions are a major motivation for ethical behavior, for behaviors towards integrity. What we have in this country is there's a major shortfall in sanctions. If there are no sanctions with the institutions that we have, if they are not really working to make people afraid of breaking the law, then no amount of policies, unfortunately, can lead us home. Thank you.
I think in order to promote community ownership of the document, There's need not only for consultative meeting like this, but we need to have validation workshop so that the stakeholders will go over the document, try to validate whether they are in keeping with our ethics and our beliefs, so that we know this is our own document and we take ownership of the whole policy. The second and the final point, Mr. Chairman, is the issue of having it well disseminated among our people at the grassroots level. And we suggest that the policy should be embedded in our curriculum. Teach this to catch them young, right from primary school. You know, we have civic education, secondary school. Teach our younger generation that these are the ethics, these are the values. In any society that doesn't have, that lose its ethical values, that society is bound to collapse.
Give him his shoes somewhere here, his phone and everything. Bye bye. Hey, Oga, where do you think you are going? Home.
You never shake body.
Eh?
You never shake body.
Shake body, see?
Huh?
Eh?
Never shake body.
I no get combo for my body.
You go take for here. Sit down there.
What's this man still doing here?
They say I do shake body. I shake body, I shake body. They say I do this. And I say I don't get combo.
You are asking for money.
Sorry, ma'am.
Asking for money to bail a suspect is an act of corruption. Both of you will be punished. Corruption is not allowed within the force. Remember,
police is your friend. Giving and taking bribe is wrong.
Corruption, not in my country.
Stop corruption now.
Corruption not in my country.
In his closing remarks at the end of the interactive session, the chairman of ICPC assured that some of the issues raised had been anticipated, but that once the policy was adopted by government, implementation strategies would be fashioned out to ensure that it succeeds.
In my opening statement, I said that the conversation is about what should be the pillars of the policy, on what should the policy rest. I think we've had a very robust conversation around that. As to how it then goes forward, that's a different assignment entirely. Once government adopts this policy based on the pillars that we have discussed, which is a framework, a skeleton, all of the other issues raised, for example, consequence management, which Soji adequately captured in his presentation, the sanctions, enforcing the regulatory component, especially of professional bodies, of regulators and all that. Those are conversations that we will then have about how should this go forward.
When adopted, it is hoped that the policy will enhance transparency and accountability in the public and private sectors, change public mindsets about corruption, its incidences and ways it can be controlled, restore public trust and confidence in governance, and influence a change of attitude for the better among the citizenry. Emphasize the role of personal responsibility in national development and improve the understanding of the public about corruption prevention mechanisms. That is our package for this week. You can watch the program on our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/ICPC Nigeria. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, wash your hands regularly with soap and maintain social distance. See you again next week. Bye for now.